Okay, we've got one of the premier matchups that we have this week. Bucks Bills going at it. This one's in Buffalo. It's a 1 o'clock Eastern game. We've got our guy Teron Armstead back to preview that trench matchup of the Buccaneers offensive tackles versus what the Bills got at edge rusher. Let's hear what he had to say about this one. Here we go. Back with our guy Teron Armstead for another trench breakdown. We're talking offensive tackles for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the defensive linemen, particularly their edge rushers for the Buffalo Bills. This is an exciting game that we got to get to. There's a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, especially on the trenches. But specifically, Teron, I want to talk to you about arm length. It's something that's talked about a lot during the draft process. Some people think it's way overblown. Who cares how long a guy's arms are? Who cares what the wingspan is? If they can play, let them play. But there are points to where it does matter. And for a guy like Greg Rousseau, fantastic defensive lineman, he uses that unique length to his advantage. Now, Tristan Wirfs, he's got 34-inch arms, so he's got adequate offensive arm length for the NFL level. Luke Gedeke next to him, or on the other side, I should say, he's got shorter arms. So we talk about a guy like Greg Rousseau, somebody who uses length to his advantage. I know you got decently long arms yourself, so it's not like you had a big disadvantage during your day. But how do you go up against guys who use length to their advantage as pass rushers?
Yeah, the length aspect of O-line, D-line play really doesn't matter until it does. And what I mean by that, when you have someone with elite arm length, like Greg Rousseau, that's when it can become a strength of theirs, and it's a part of their pass rush plan and all those things. So Greg Rousseau, with his length and what he's able to do to keep guys from getting connected to him, that's when it becomes a challenge. Someone like Tristan Wirfs, not as much, because even if Greg Rousseau makes contact first, Tristan has enough anchor to stop power. But guys that struggle with power, Greg Rousseau getting that first contact, getting the long arm in, he can drive those guys back, and they are really just fighting and trying to die a slow death and hold them off from getting to the quarterback. I love this matchup. Greg Rousseau, we haven't seen the best of him, Trevor. I still think it's so much more levels to his game as he evolved, and I don't think he uses arm length enough. Even from playing against him personally, it was easy for me to anticipate when the long arm was coming, and a lot of times I would knock it down early in the game because I know it would mess with his mind, mess with his psyche. So then he'll be hesitant to use his long arm for the rest of the game. So first quarter, if I ever got a chance to trap a long arm, I knew I had him from using that move the rest of the game.
Okay, I would love for you to dive a little bit deeper into that. You talk about, hey, I knew when it was coming. I know just from talking to you over the course of the season, that goes into, getting into the film, getting in the lab, making sure that you got the certain tells on guys. But, for somebody like Rousseau, who when you were going up against him, obviously it was a couple years ago, so he's grown as a player since then. But like, what are some of the tells, when you are watching these guys who they like to use length as their advantage, dictate that contact like you mentioned? What's some of the tells where you feel like you said what's coming, and then what are the counters to say, okay, when I do know what's coming, I'm actually going to be the one who's going to get to my counter first, and I'm going to be able to neutralize it?
For sure. It's guys that don't telegraph, that don't advertise their moves. Those are the ones that are extremely difficult to block because you are late to react to everything. A guy by the name of Von Miller, he was like the master of disguise with his rushes. Everything looked the same, which is why you see a guy like Von who doesn't have long arms. He's not the biggest defensive end we've seen, but we've seen him consistently long arm tackles to the quarterback, to the ground, because they just cannot see it coming and he doesn't telegraph, he doesn't advertise. Younger players, and Greg Rousseau has done this in the past, well, as he's going for his rush, you'll see that inside arm just freeze. Like he's literally watching, he's looking to find his entry and try to get that long arm into your chest. Me being like a veteran player, by the time Greg Rousseau came into the league, I had a really good feel and like vision on a long arm. I was not the one to let long arms get into my chest at all. So with my inside hand, anytime I see that inside arm freeze and I see that hand start to extend, I'm trapping. And what I mean by trap is I'm breaking that wrist, forearm area, and I'm knocking it down before he can ever touch me. And with that momentum, most of the times it send D linemen to the ground. So you see Deion Dawkins, he does it a ton. You see Trent Williams does it a ton. Those guys are anticipating and they're reading that rusher as that arm frees and he's looking for his entry, timing it up, hit the wrist, hit the forearm. Those guys going to the ground.
I love it. I love the teaching we got going on here on this show. The last thing that I want to talk to you about is defending the run and in the run game. It's more than just the guys up front. Obviously, it starts up front, but specifically for Buffalo, their second level has been an issue for them when it comes to defending the run. Not that they don't have talented linebackers, but it just overall, it's been tough for those guys to be consistent this season with how they defend the run. If you're an offensive line, how do you take advantage of that? How do you look at a team that you go, hey, the weak link of their run defense really seems to be, or should you say the inconsistencies comes from that linebacker level? How do you attack that? Is it something as simple as, hey, we're going to run duo a lot more this season or a lot more this game? Or is it something where it's maybe a different part of the game plan where you're just saying, hey, we're trying to get you to climb to that second level a little bit sooner to really put those guys in conflict and give those guys a tough job? How do you attack linebackers who might be struggling to defend the run like Buffalo kind of has been so far this season?
Yeah, no, you said it, Trevor. Is getting attached, getting connected to the second level. You don't have to have a kill shot. You're not looking to blow up the linebacker. All you want to do is get to the second level and get connected, get in the way. These guys are struggling to read. Their gap discipline and gap sound has been off. It's been inconsistent. Different than what we've seen in past years from the Buffalo Bills. And Miami, in their last game against the Bills, they took advantage of that to the highest level. Aaron Brewer, Patrick Paul, those guys were getting into space, getting into the second level, getting connected, and it showed. Devon Achane had a huge game against those guys. I'm sure Tampa will try to take the same approach this week against Buffalo. If you can get the front line, like get the play started, get the ball back to the line of scrimmage from that front line of the Buffalo Bills, you can get the center, the guards up to the second level. You got potential for big plays. We saw that last week.
Well, Teron, we appreciate it. I know you're headed out to Madrid to take a look at your Dolphins taking on the Washington Commanders. So travel safe, my friend. Enjoy it, and we'll see you next week.
Appreciate you, bro. See you next week.
All right, there we go. Teron Armstead helping us preview this Bills-Bucks matchup here. Dalton, where do you want to start? Do you want to talk about the Bills or you want to talk about the Bucs side of things?
Yeah, I think assuming Baker Mayfield can be protected by Tristan Wirfs and Luke Gedeke against Greg Rousseau, against A.J. Epinesa, against Joey Bosa, then he's looking to attack down the field, right? And the one problem that he's had this season is that even when he has seen too high safety looks with the Bills, which the Bills do employ a lot, it's a staple of the Sean McDermott, Bobby Babbage defense, a lot of too high safety looks, Mayfield has struggled a bit. He's trying to force it. There are times when it's been very high, as you know, and there's times when he's put the ball in danger. He's been kind of a gunslinger this year, and lately, the last 3 games, he's only completed 2 deep balls, and those were last week against New England that were right at 20 yards. You're not talking about those big vertical routes that create 50 and 60-yard touchdowns. So you look at Baker Mayfield this year against 2 high safeties, 61.9 passing grade. That's 22nd among all quarterbacks with at least 50 dropbacks against 2 high safeties. Most big-time throws in the league, but also the second most turnover-worthy plays. You're getting this gunslinger version of Baker Mayfield. Now, he's had to carry them through injuries, but the accuracy has wavered a bit against those looks. He's got the 5th highest rate of uncatchable passes. He's going to have to be a little more patient, I think, at times, and sometimes just manage the game a little bit better. I understand that the high end comes with it. He's the 4th highest graded deep passer in the NFL this year, but against all these too high looks that he's going to get against Buffalo, he might have to just calm it down just a little bit and work to the chains a little bit more to manufacture offense and possess the ball a little bit longer.
And Bucky Irving practiced today, so looks like he could be on track to play in this game. Obviously, that'll be a big deal for the Buccaneers if he can go out there and play. You know, for the Bills, Dalton, there's a lot of talk about them, going after a Rashid Shaheed or a Jalen Waddle or somebody to be able to take the top off of a defense and give them some extra speed there when they're getting into their passing attacks. But I try to look up some numbers to show that, Buffalo is just terrible when it comes to explosive plays or targets 20 or more down the field. They're really not. They're kind of middle of the pack when it comes to targeting guys 20 or more yards down the field, when it comes to hitting these shots and getting those explosive plays when you are looking deep. But it's not that like they're dead last in the NFL. This is still an offense that can move the ball relatively well, even beyond 20 yards. Now, is it as potent as it could be? No, but I didn't really find a lot of numbers that said, this is a major issue for this team. It's really just something that might be holding them back from winning a Super Bowl or being as good as they can possibly be. It's not something that is keeping them really down and making them a terrible team. So I wanted to make sure that I say that before I say, Dalton, the book on the Bills this year, if they turn the ball over, they lose. They don't, they win. That's basically it. In games where the Bills have 2 or more turnovers, they are 0-3, and they have a 15.0 points per game average. The games where they have 1 or fewer turnover, they are 6-0 this season, and they have a 33.5 points per game average. That is insanely different. And when we talk about turnovers mattering, this team, it probably matters the most for the Buffalo Bills. The Buccaneers are tied for 7th most turnovers forced in the NFL this year with 14 total turnovers. And so it really, I think it's just going to come down to Buffalo taking care of the football. That's what I think it is all about with them. Then, of course, defending the run a lot better than they have been throughout this season. I'm going to go with the Buccaneers in this one. I think it's kind of a coin flip, but I think the Bucs are going to play better, more efficiently. I think Baker Mayfield is going to be on the big-time throw train a little bit more on this game. So I'll go Bucs 28, Bills 27.
Yeah, this was the hardest game to pick to me, and it's a great call about the turnovers. And I think what you have with the Bills is you have an elite quarterback, obviously, in Josh Allen. Any week you have him, you can score a lot of points. But at the end of the day, they're a ball control offense, right? And to the turnover part of that, it means you're not controlling, you're not possessing the football. You're going to have issues scoring points. And the Bills don't have the wide receiver group that's built to come from behind and overcome those mistakes. So there's still a ball control, run-first offense with all their tight ends and heavy personnel and everything like they like to use. So it's a really interesting matchup also to see if Todd Bowles is going to send a lot of extra pressure like he does on most quarterbacks on Josh Allen, because generally what you unleash there is Allen's legs and his ability to break pressure running the football. Tough game to pick. Bills are still really hard to beat at home, though. I think you're getting a high-scoring game. I think both quarterbacks are going to have a lot of success in this game. I'm going to take Buffalo 34-31. We get a high-scoring one.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned, the playing from behind versus playing for a lead, because there's 2 things that I looked up with the Bills for this game, and I was like, oh yeah, this will probably be my talking point here for this game, just because of feel going into the research. The first one was, like I said, are they really just terrible at attacking deep down the field? And they're not. They're right around, like I said, league average, but they're not terrible at it. And then the other stat I looked up was offensive grade, or even passing grade when playing with a lead or when not playing with the lead. And Dalton, the numbers aren't as bad as you would think. But again, like when we're watching these games, it feels as though when this team is playing with a lead, they're just playing so much more confidently. But they're still playing decent, at least when it comes to when they're not ahead on the scoreboard. So like that was another point where I was like, oh, I wonder if I'm going to find the numbers and say that the Bills are just terrible at this. But they're not. I think that a lot of the way that we view the Buffalo Bills right now is we're comparing them to a championship caliber team. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. This team has Super Bowl aspirations. But I think then a lot how critically we have been of the Buffalo Bills, to be honest with you, sounds a little harsh outside of the fact that they just have to take care of the football better than they have in the games that they lost.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. They have Super Bowl aspirations. That's why they're held to such a high standard. And at the end of the day, we're going to judge this team in the postseason, right? Whether they win this division or not, because look, they've got a hole to climb out of, even with trying to catch New England. And New England's got a relatively easy schedule, at least on paper, going down the line here. But either way, the Bills are going to be judged in January, not necessarily in October, November. Sure. And look, there are moments you show signs of weakness, but they weren't going to go undefeated. Nobody's going undefeated. So there's times where you have to overcome your flaws and just work through it, and that includes even in a game that they just lost against the Dolphins. And look, they got to bounce back. They go back home to Buffalo where they're comfortable. I think they're going to have a good day on offense here. I do. I just think we know in the back of our minds there's 1 or 2 things. We look at the Bills and we go, I don't know, back 7 on defense, receiving core, things like that. We'll find out week to week how that goes in the regular season. I'm not worried about them in the short term. Come January, I might have more of those concerns.